What is the thing that has crossed your hands that you thought, I can't believe I'm holding this? Besides I guess I would say the 6 heads.
Okay, here's one of them right here.
Okay.
This right here won the Revolutionary War. This literally won
David Barton is right here.
Okay. What happened is there was a guy named von Steuben. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No, I don't think so.
He met Benjamin Franklin in Paris, and he went to Ben Franklin. He really pumped himself up. Told him he was a general in the Prussian army. You know, George Washington would love me. He would love me. He would love me. Later found out he was a captain, but he ends up coming to Valley Forge. Valley Forge was a wreck.
Oh, he's the guy who started doing the precision drilling.
He went to George Washington. I can get your troops to the greatest military precision in the world. I will make you the best army in the world. George Washington said, yeah, you're like the 100th guy who's told me that. But you know what? You got the letter from Ben Franklin. Here's 100 troops. Within 2 years, he was a major general in the Continental Army. He was made the Inspector General of the Army. And in 1779, he printed all these for officers. Now, if you open up the front cover, just open up the front board, you'll notice that that's recycled paper in there. This was in the middle of the Revolutionary War. It's impossible to find it with the original boards, by the way. Wow. And the reason it has that recycled paper was so scarce, they used old magazines for the first few pages.
Wow. Order and Discipline of the Troops of the United States.
Okay. There might be 5 of those books in that condition left with the original boards from the first printing.
And this just walked into your...
Yes. Well, I have... It's sort of... I have a lot of people around the country that know that I will buy things off them. Yeah. Okay, I'm a middleman. They come to me. These are guys who go to a estate sale after estate sale after estate sale. They call me up. I'll give you this much money because they need the money right away, and I don't mind sitting on it for a few years. This actually has, and this is the amazing part. These are never there. That one's torn, but these are the original boards. Plates for how to set up your camp in the Continental Army.
You ever seen this, David?
The original is in the archives of the United States. You can take it out if you want to. That is a contemporary copy of reported, the story goes that this was actually from Henry Lee's family. Henry Lee was Robert E. Lee's father. He was a general working for George Washington. And that is a letter from... The letter was so important that General Henry Lee, during the Whiskey Rebellion, thought that he should copy down this letter himself because George Washington wrote him the letter, and the original letter he gave to the National Archives. This was basically he wrote to him the importance of putting down the Whiskey Rebellion, but doing it in accordance with the Constitution and the courts of the United States.
Wow, I don't think our president's writing those things anymore. I don't think anybody around our president is writing anything like that.
It's a pretty amazing letter.
That is amazing.
And I had, I'm terrible at reading that old writing right there. I had a typed out copy of it, but there's an airline with my luggage somewhere. I brought these on the plane with me.
All right. When we come back, I want to introduce you to a couple of friends, and we're going to do a little show and tell.
Okay.
And just kind of celebrate for lovers of history when we come back in a second. Okay. Thanks. I want to introduce you to a couple of people. You know David Barton from Wall Builders, and I want to introduce you to somebody else, a historian extraordinaire, Brent Ashworth, who has helped us this summer on our American History Museum. I don't know of a collector in the country or the world that is a private collector that has anything like what you have. A fraction of what he brought today, he's going to show you, and he just brought some letters and some antiquity. And David, you pulled a couple of things out of a box today that I couldn't believe. I thought we'd just kind of go around and just kind of show some things and then talk about them as we go. Sure. You first.
All right. I'll start with this. This is the first ever, since this is November, Thanksgiving is our month, this is the first ever printing of the first Thanksgiving in America. So this was done by the Secretary of the Colony. It's called the New England Memorial. And that is the first printing. It has the records of the colony all through the years, but that's where you get the first Thanksgiving. Along with that, you have here about 300 years later, that's the handwritten Thanksgiving proclamation by President Grover Cleveland. So what they started here, we're still doing 300 years, well, more 400 years later now, but this is Grover Cleveland, the only president served 2 non-consecutive terms. That's his handwritten Thanksgiving proclamation.
Every time I see one of these things, I think of Brent, and I think, bet he's never seen that. And he's like, oh yeah, I had 3 of those. You ever seen one of those?
Yes, I have a couple.
Have you ever seen anything that has not passed through your hands?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like what? What is the one thing that is like the Holy Grail for you, besides the Holy Grail, unless you have that as well?
I don't have that. Oh, there are always things we're looking for. George Washington's first inaugural address, which we know is at least 64 pages long, but we know that from a fragment that exists. And he was talked out of delivering it because it was too long. And he gave one that's about 8 pages long, which the National Archives is happy to sell you for a few bucks. But the original went to a historian, Jared Sparks, the president of Harvard University. And the family gave papers to Jared Sparks to publish the definitive history of George Washington. But thinking this speech was of no value since Washington had not given it, even though he gave every reason for why he left retirement again to head up our government under the Constitution, anytime he got a request from some crazy guy like me that wanted some handwriting, he'd go over and snip off a few lines and mail it to him. Yeah. Now, if you can imagine a historian doing that without making a copy of it first. And so in 1932, for the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, a man by the name of John J. Fitzpatrick was basically brought in by the Congress to try to put together everything that Washington ever wrote. And it ended up being, I think, I've got a set of it put away. It's like 39 volumes, okay? There's been other things found since then. But when he came to that speech, that important speech, they put together the pieces that they could find. And he said, that a comment is needless. He says, it's doubtful that this priceless speech will ever be put back together. Well, they're still finding pieces of it. And I got a piece in 1981 from an attic in Boston that was found still in a, they're still looking for pieces of it. But the piece that I got, I didn't bring it here today, but it completes a thought. Washington was the one president of the United States that never wanted to be president. Leave me alone. He came out of a sense of duty. And the only one. Even Lincoln wanted to be president, but I'm not sure he wanted to be president after he got what he saw. He got into it. But out of a sense of duty, we kept pulling him out of retirement to lead up the Constitutional Convention, to head the government, and to win our independence to begin with. And he gave the reasons for that in this speech. He didn't have anybody to follow, so he wrote up definitively for history, and we don't have all of it, the reasons for why he did what he did. And the pieces that we have are remarkable, and this piece that I had completes a thought where he said, I appeal to the searcher of hearts, to God himself basically, to say that this has been the greatest personal, and my fragment starts in the middle of the word sacrifice. This is the greatest personal sacrifice I have ever in the course of my existence been called upon to make. Wow. What a statement.
No
we would have
president would say
loved
that
to have
now.
the whole speech.
Yeah. Okay, show me one piece that you brought.
Okay. Well, there are a number that we could talk about. This one here is a speech from just a lonely young girl that was had hosted the person that she's talking about on Catalina Island during the summer of 1943-44, and she was writing her arranged husband, Jim Doherty, was off fighting the war. She didn't have a lot of relationship with him other than some letters, and Doherty said that when she got famous, he took her 200 letters out and burned them. I'm talking about Marilyn Monroe. Right. And
should have burned the house.
He should have burned his house down rather than the 200 letters. But this is one of the early letters signed Norma Jane Doherty. And she's writing this friend, and she says, Jimmy shipped out and so on. He phoned just before he left and all that. He says, I haven't gone to work yet. I believe I'm going to start taking up modeling. for I have a chance to maybe become a model, commercial modeling.
Isn't that
Boy,
amazing?
talk about an understatement. Yeah,
Real quick, let me
1944.
let me see. You have one from, let's come back to this one.
Okay.
Do the Mark Twain.
Mark Twain?
Mark Twain is amazing.
I love Mark Twain, and I've got first editions of his books. You've had some great ones come into your shop.
Well, the wonderful thing about Mark Twain is he was born in Nevada, believe it or not. Well, that's because the name Mark Twain he didn't start using until he got to Carson City.
True, right.
So in Nevada they say he's
and all that.
So you're about as big a liar as he is.
That's right. You would love that. This was written in 1896. He's a famous author. His two great books are out and so on. From the Pickwick Club in New Orleans. When the Lord finished the world, he pronounced it good. That's what I said about my first work, too. But time, I tell you, time takes the confidence out of these incautious early opinions. It's more than likely that he thinks about the world now pretty much as I think about the innocents abroad. The fact is there's a trifle too much water in both. Signed, yours truly, Mark Twain.
All right, back in just a second.